David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Asia, and the prog-rock supergroup Asia formed in London, England in 1981 and just exploded in popularity the next year after the release of their self-titled debut album Asia in 1982, which that's the album right there on the wall. So it's a prog-rock supergroup, and we've got Steve Howe on guitar from Yes, Carl Palmer behind the kit on drums from ELP, and Carl put the P in ELP. Also Jeff Downs, which he worked with Yes, and also the band The Buggles, and the late great bassist vocalist John Wetton, which he worked with King Crimson and another prog rock supergroup, the band UK, with Bill Bruford and Alan Halsworth. That's another great band for sure. But Asia itself is a great band, and they've continued beyond the original formation back in the 80s. I think they had an original member reunion in 2006, but there's tons of great musicians and guitarists that have worked with this band. So here we go. So in the guitar department over the years, aside from Steve Howe, which I'm a huge Steve Howe fan, I love Steve, there's lots of guitarists that have worked with this group. Guthrie Govan, Pat Thrall, Mark Bonilla has worked with them. I think most recently Mark's been working with them. Bumblefoot has worked with them. In the studio, Elliott Randall, Steve Lukather. There's a ton of players. But here's an image of some of the guitarists that have worked with this band over the years. So I have to admit, when I was putting this episode together and I finally framed the Asia album on the wall right there, I started laughing, and I started thinking of the film 40-Year-Old Virgin, and there's a scene in that movie where, he starts laughing. He's like, "Did you frame an Asia poster?" And here I framed an Asia album, so I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm not a virgin, so I don't have to worry about that. But in this episode, we're going to basically pull music from 3 different Asia albums. The self-titled debut from '82, kind of a new greatest hits compilation called Then and Now, and also an album that features Guthrie Govan too. So here we go. With the opening, that's the eternal classic Heat of the Moment from the first Asia album, and there's these huge bar chords and power chords at play, something like this. So it's these huge bar chords and power chords, and it's an A flat major right here. And I've seen this written, like in books and notation or whatever, with everything, full bar chords, but I don't think that's actually what Steve's doing. The first chord, it does seem like, a partial or almost complete bar chord. You don't really hear as much of the top strings, so it's definitely the bottom 4, and just a little taste of the upper strings. And then you get right here, that's B flat minor, and you really just hear the bottom 4 strings. You don't really hear the top strings. And then G flat major down here, and a little bit of the upper strings. And then back to that A flat major. And then right there, it's a stacked D flat 5 over A flat right there. Definitely a power chord. You don't hear the top strings on that chord either. So it's little pieces and parts. I definitely don't hear this. It's not every chord, a full bar chord. It's just pieces and parts of full bar chords. Or at least that's what my ear hears. When I hear that riff, that's what I'm hearing is, occasionally a full chord kind of creeps in, and then partial chords. Repeat that 5 times and just do the same thing over and over until that last repeat, like this. The last time right here. flat major, that B flat minor, and then the G flat major, and then just for a second it's C sharp over F right here, and then right back to that F sharp major, and that last time you hear more of the chord, and then it repeats again. But that's a really famous riff, and those huge chords. I love big chords like that. Sounds massive, like a wall of chords right there. Next up's the song One Step Closer from the first Asia album, and this definitely reveals kind of this trademark area in Steve Howe's playing style. And he's not a real big chord person. I mean, he does play chords and use chords a lot, more so on acoustic guitar. And then on electric, he does this kind of weaving where he plays chords for a minute and then he'll weave into the single note melodic line, or some licks and phrasing and stuff. It's really interesting where he kind of darts back and forth, and he leaves lots of space for keyboards and bass. And there's tons of keyboards, in Asia's music. And this is an approach that he used in Yes and GTR, and obviously with Asia too. So, One Step Closer has like this clean picked chord part, and then he starts doing scale runs. So the chord part's like this. Right, it's like a G6 right there. And then an F6-9, and then E minor 7 right there. And then right there, he basically starts playing G major or G Ionian, starting on D. I guess you could also think of this as D Mixolydian, but he's doing right, and kind of starts there, ends on that D, then he picks this up from this E, and then climbs up to that D. Right? And it's really weird the way it moves from the chord right into the scale run. And he goes right back to the chords again. Next time it's actually extended, so instead of doing it here, I actually convert to this, which was the same scale run we had here, but just relocated right there. And then you distinctly hear, and he gets way up there, and of course he's barely using any overdrive. It's almost clean right there. That's a really tricky guitar part because you're going back and forth between the chord picking section and then those scale runs. So check out One Step Closer. That's really challenging. Next up's the song Cutting It Free from the first Asia album, and this song actually begins with a fingerpicked acoustic, and then the electric takes over, and once again Steve starts doing this position shifting scale work, something like this. Something like that. So it's actually a finger-picked acoustic guitar. I'm just playing all this on electric. I was also hybrid picking right there with picking fingers. But it's basically moving in the beginning like this little D thing. Right? And you're really just kind of moving this melodic line along the high E right there. Like that. And then do everything the same, but change the root note to C right there. Change it to B right there. So that's tricky, and leave it to Steve Howe to come up with some weird, tricky, finger-picking acoustic guitar part. Especially those two. That's real stretchy, for the pinky up there, and also, when it goes to B. And then right there, just kind of move down here. You're kind of playing with, it's like a B flat 6, I guess. And then I'm going to basically repeat that again. And then just start hammering out this B flat 5 power chord. And right there you hear Steve shift into scale mode, and he starts doing So grab that A twice right there. And he's doing this kind of sneaky double picking in there occasionally. And then you're going to go up an octave and do the exact same thing right here. And then go up another octave and it's modified like that. So it's a weird little kind of Steve Howe melodic scale run. Next up's the song Blue Moon Monday, and this came from the album Silent Nation, and this is Guthrie Govan on guitar. And it's this kind of arpeggiated, eerie chord part, and I love stuff like this. It's not really hard to play, it just sounds really good. It starts with this E minor 9 right there. I love that chord. And then a B minor 7 right there. And then C major 7 right here. And that changes to A sus2. And you'll notice like the picking pattern, it's straight through the chord the first time. And then this kind of staggered, you know, on the B minor 7. And then straight through that C major 7. Stagger it on that A sus2. But it's really cool, really simple guitar part, but it definitely, you know, catches your attention and draws interest. You know, what's going to happen next? Next up's the song Rise. This also came from the Silent Nation album, so once again this is Guthrie Govan on guitar. And it opens with the scratch and sniff, kind of funky power chord riff, and then Guthrie starts this melodic idea that he starts harmonizing. And the first guitar part's like this. Right there, but it's B flat 5 to D flat 5, G flat 5, back to D flat 5, and then A flat 5. And he's scratching, kind of, you know, percussive muting in there. You also hear a little bit of vibrato on those chords. I love when guitarists add vibrato and they kind of move the notes. It's mainly on that last chord right there. And as far as the harmonized melodic part, I'm going to loop this with a TC Electronic Ditto looper so you can kind of hear what it sounds like. But it starts with this guitar right here. Right? It's kind of like a B flat minor thing. B flat minor 7, I guess. Then he harmonizes that up a third. And then another octave, you know, from the original part right here. So I'm going to loop this with the TC Electronic Ditto looper, and here's the first guitar part. With that B flat minor 7 thing right here. And then up a third. He's going to harmonize another guitar right here. Higher than the original guitar, like this. So there's the harmony part, and then here's that chord riff. Guitar parts do that, where they come together and they create this other part. Really cool. Alright, last but not least is the song Days Like These, and this came from a compilation album called Then and Now, and it was half greatest hits and half new material at that time. I think that was in the 90s, like it might have been 1990 actually. But this is Steve Lukather on guitar, and once again Steve's layering, you know, things, layering guitar parts. So it's a little different than what we just saw in Rise from Guthrie Govan, but I love when guitarists do this. They kind of orchestrate, a couple parts, and it works together and creates like a different or new part. So the first guitar part's doing this, just power chords. Basic right there. It's D5, a D over F sharp right there for a second, and then a G5 right there. And you're just kind of bashing those chords out. And then you hear a second guitar that comes in. I'm going to loop this once again with the TC Electronic Ditto looper. And there's a second guitar comes in that's a little cleaner. And it's playing with these extensions, like these sus chords up here, like this. Something like that. So it's D major to D sus2, and then eventually that D sus4 right there. There, like a little bit of G5, and then it comes down. That's kind of different right there too. Grabbing that F sharp with the open G, back to that F sharp, and then that E to D right there. A really cool kind of complementary part to the other guitar part. And when you put those together, it sounds like this. It's really cool. Those dual guitar parts that come together and they create this magical third part. Right, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Asia. Definitely a very interesting band, and I'm a huge fan of almost all the guitarists that have worked with this group. I definitely love Steve Howe and Lukather and Guthrie Govan and Pitrelli and some of these players, Bumblefoot. And it's interesting, when you see a band like this that's been going at it for a while. They've had member changes, lineup changes. Stylistically, they've stayed pretty much the same, even though they have kind of, had a revolving cast of characters as far as musicians. But definitely a very interesting group. I'm not really sure what's going to, happen in the future. John did pass away, and I think they're going to forge ahead and continue, the Asia legacy. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.